Alright, so now the seam is all sewn up, and so now do some stitching to attach the lace to the skirt. And what I'm going to do is a whip stitch along the bottom part so that I can leave the top a little bit open. Alright, lace is sewn on to the bottom half of the dress, so now we will build the top. Alright, so let's grab some more fabric, and what we're going to do is we're going to take our little tape measure here and we're going to measure our doll, okay? So what you're going to do, put the skirt on, or the bottom half of the dress, however you want to look at it. Then you are going to measure from below the dress point. You don't want to measure from up here. You want to measure probably at the very bottom where the end of the lace is at. So measure from there over the top of her shoulder and back over to the very bottom where the lace begins, if that's what you're going to use. You want to give yourself at least a 3/4 of an inch to an inch extra. So we're going to take the tape measure and we're going to run it over the shoulder. Now don't pull it taut. Okay, you want it a little loose. And we will measure all the way around. So I have 11.5, so I'll just move it up to 12 inches from front to back on the shoulder. And then we are going to measure underneath her arm, so it's basically armpit around. So we'll take the tape measure, run it around underneath her armpit, and we have 10 inches. So it's 10 inches by 12 inches. So what we're going to do is take this and transfer that information onto our fabric. So we're going to go 12 inches. I'm going to grab my chalk. I don't want to include the seam. I'm going to square this up. And then we're going to measure 10 inches over. I'm going to grab a straight ruler. Off the seam. And then we're going to fold it in half. And square it up. Doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, well now we're going to grab our girl, do a measurement to make sure that it actually is a good length. Take out the pins for this exact moment. Run it like a sash over her shoulder. to make sure your length is correct. So I got my overlap, a little bit of overlap. So now what we're going to do, put her off to the side, center this once again. Pin it shut. And we're working without a pattern. We're actually just making the pattern. It's not even going to be a pattern. It's just going to be the dress. No pattern at all. Alright, so now we need to find the center of this piece of fabric here. So we're going to lay a hard ruler down. And because we trimmed it off, it is now 9.5. Take our chalk and go to 4.5. That center. Now you want to go, because this is a 2-inch ball, but her head is bigger than her neck. We want to have the measurement of the neck. We want this to be taut. So what you can do is you measure, not circumference, don't go all the way around. Just go from side to side. So, stretched out is 2 inches. So I am going to go I'll probably go about 2. So that means it's 1 inch on either side of the chalk line. So you mark 1 and 1. Then you have a choice of what you want to use to make your moon. So I'm going to actually pin this a little bit tighter up so that I get a more accurate circle. I have very slippery fabric, so I want to make sure that that does not move. So next up, so we'll measure down 2 inches, or 1 inch, because we're going to do 2. So we'll measure down 1 inch. So we've got to move that pin down here. Measure down 1 inch and draw your line. Now your line is bigger than 1 inch, so you're not going to cut to the line, you're going to cut before the line. So you can see where my 2 marks are, and then my other. So now we're going to cut a half circle smaller than what you marked in your chalk line. It's not going to be perfectly round, trust me. The only way you can get it perfectly round is lay it flat, draw a little circumference circle, and cut it out in a circle. So now we can take these pins out, and I will show you that it is not a circle. Close, but it's not a circle. But nobody will see that, because it'll be underneath the choker. Alright, so let me show you. It's not a perfect circle. I could cut this part and make it into a circle, which I think I will. Alright, cleaned up. Now, there's no way that her head will fit through that. And how we fix that, we have determined that this is the way the dress will go. Okay? The top will be this way. So what we're going to do, flip it open. Alright, so what we'll do is go right down the center of the circle, draw yourself a line, and cut, because my ruler's offset, so I'm going to cut just slightly over from my mark. Alright, so now it has an opening. So you turn it inside out. You're going to leave this alone. We're going to pin the arms. This does not get sewn or anything, but I'm going to hold it temporarily together. Now the reason why I don't have the two pieces butted up against each other, because remember we're going to put a zipper in there, and I want that little gap. So now we're going to turn her over. And we're going to create her side. You can also glue this. Now we'll take the pins out of her back. Take the top off of her. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna trim the edges over. I'm not trimming the arms, just gonna trim the edge so that it fits her on the waist. Because this is where I'm gonna be sewing. So I'm gonna trim off just a little bit. Now I'm going to take this to my sewing machine and I'm going to sew all of this, but I'm going to turn her little cuffs in first, because once I sew this becomes very difficult to sew in the sewing machine. So I'm going to turn the cuff in first. Alright, so I have one cuff rolled like we did with the skirt. Roll it and then fold it in half and then fold it again so that you have the pretty piece on the edge. You don't want any of the spray on the outside, or else it'll continue to fray unless you get fabric that doesn't fray. So let me sew this up, and then I'm going to do the other sleeve, and then I'll show you how I fold and stitch the ends. Alright, so the arm sleeves have been sewn. I'm not a perfect seamstress, nor do I ever claim to be. I have some boo-boos, but you know, it will work. Alright, so now going to fold this again in half and pin it together, and then I'm going to sew all the way up and then sew up to where the sleeve is, you know, clipped in so that you don't see the raw edges of the sleeve.
Hey guys, I just wanted to hop on here really quick. I sure hope that you guys are enjoying this wonderful tutorial, and if you are, that is great. And if you would like to see more of these wonderful tutorials, go ahead and hit that like button. And while you're at it, why not hit that subscribe button? It's totally free. It lets YouTube know that you like my content and you want me to make more of these wonderful tutorials. And if you want up-to-date notifications when I upload a brand new video, go ahead and hit that bell, and in the drop-down menu, choose all notifications. Now, let's get back to that tutorial.
All sewn up, sleeves are sewn. Next, hem up the bottom so that you don't have any kind of fray. Alright, so now the hem is all sewn. Now I'm going to sew the neckline. So rolling doesn't work very well on a neckline due to the fact that it has such a severe curve. So it's just going to be a simple fold. And then if you are going to sew and not glue, you can actually glue this. But if you're going to sew, make sure you use some fray lock to keep the fabric from fraying. Alright, so I don't normally pin all the way across because I'm making such a tiny hemline. I am going to be adjusting it as I sew. Alright, so the neck seam has been sewn, but because it was such a close seam, this will fray for sure. So you can either use fray lock, or Aleene's makes this super fabric adhesive and it's very flexible. I am all out of fabric fusion, so I'm actually going to use a little bit of this, and I'm just going to run it along the seam. Alright, so as soon as that dries, we will move on to the installation of the zipper. Alright, so it's mostly dry, so let's move on to the zipper. The very, very top of this is really not needed, but I'm going to fold them down and glue them down so that it looks a little bit cleaner, because we are not going to sew this in. But I am going to use some more of my fabric glue to glue that down. You can use hot glue. This is just Aleene's from Walmart. Do not get it on the zipper, or else the zipper won't work. Unless you don't want the zipper to work. Then I would say encase the zipper. Alright, so next is fold up and either glue or sew the edges to where the zipper is going to be. So I'm going to do a single fold sew, because we're going to also glue the zipper in. So I'm going to do a single fold. I'll probably use some pins. Do a single fold sew. And again, I don't pin all the way down because I make adjustments as I go. So I'm going to put in a couple of pins. Take this over to my sewing machine and I'll sew this up, and I'll be right back. Alright, so the edges are now sewn, so we can take our zipper here, open it up, turn it upside down, because you want the zipper on the outside, the zipper pull. So what we're going to do is we're going to glue it right down along the edge. You can use hot glue. You can sew it. Alright, so now we're going to let it dry completely, and then we'll move on to the next step. Alright, looks like everything is dry. Let's get the clips off of here. Alright, give it a zip. Now we have a zipper. Now what we need to do is cut it off just a little bit longer and roll it up under to prevent it from unzipping completely. So we'll cut it a little bit long. You don't need to keep that. And then we're going to roll this under and glue it. Alright, now we'll let that dry. Alright, so this is now all cured. So what we're going to do now, this top bodice is a bit wider than this. So I'm going to do some pleating. I'm going to pleat this so that it'll all fit. So what I'm going to do is find my back, match it up with the zipper, and then I'm going to pin on each side of the zipper. Alright, and then I'm going to flip it over, pin the very front. Alright, let's check to make sure that I'm centered. So I'm going to pin each side. And then we'll work on the pleating. Alright, all pinned. Now I'm going to hand sew this because this would definitely not go on my sewing machine. So I'm going to use my trusty old needle and thread right here, and I'm just going to sew it together. So I'll be back as soon as I get it all sewn. Alright, so now the lace is sewn on, the top is sewn on. So I'm going to take some of these super cute butterfly beads and I'm going to sew them on at the waist. Alright, let's try it on her and see how it fits. Wonderful fit, and it looks super cute. Alright, so next we are going to work on her face. Alright, so let's work on her hat now. So what we want to do is cut a strip for the top brim of the hat. Together. And then we need to cut the top of the hat. I'm going to decide whether it'll be round. I think it's going to be. Next we cut the brim. Then I'm gonna cut right around the edge to make a big brim.